Hi guys, welcome to the fifth video of the Golang and CSRF token project series. So we had set up our myJWT file, and now let's start working on these functions. So the first function we'll work on is initJWT. So first what we're going to do is we're going to read this file. So let's use our ioutil package to read the file. And here we'll pass private key path. And this data I'm going to take into this variable called sign bytes. And if error is not equal to nil, then we'll return the error. Right, we're returning error from this function if there's an error. Then we have so then we're going to parse this data, right? We're going to parse this data. To parse it, we're going to use jwt dot parse RSA private key from PEM sign bytes. So this helps us to parse this data, and we're going to capture this in a variable called sign key. Okay, and then we'll check for error. So if error not equal to nil, return the error. So we're going to have our private. So you already know what we're doing here, right? We're going to have our private file and public file. We're just going to compare them. So before we compare them, we're just creating these sign keys and verify key and all that stuff. So the other thing that you know we have to do is we have to read our public key. So we'll read that file. To read that file, we'll say ioutil dot read file pub key path. So this is our sign file, and we need a verify file, so we'll just call it verify bytes comma error, and if error not equal to nil, we're going to return error. Then we have jwt dot parse RSA public key from PEM, and we pass these verify bytes in that, and then we get a verify key. Here also we'll check for error. So if error not equal to nil, return error, and you return nil from this function. If everything goes well, return nil, so that means the error is nil. Alright, so this is what initialize JWT does for you. And then you have your create new tokens function, and this function is also quite straightforward. So all we're doing in this function is generating the CSRF secret and generating the refresh token and generating the auth token. So here you'll say CSRF secret comma error is equal to models dot generate CSRF secret. So you will have access to your models file, and that will have a function called generate CSRF secret. We'll work on it, and here we'll handle error. So if error is not equal to nil, we'll just return from this function. So what does this function take? It takes a UUID, which is a string, takes a role which is a string. We'll work on these, don't worry about this. But most importantly, what does it return? So this returns an auth token string, a refresh token string, and a CSRF secret. So if you actually think about it, this is your most important function, because it returns the 3 most important things that you need to actually start running the project. And then you also get an error if things go wrong, right? So you've generated the CSRF secret, and this is going to be a function that we'll work on. Now to generate the refresh tokens, we'll have create refresh token string. We already have defined this function here, like the outline of it, but this is the function that we're calling. So like I told you, we'll have these 2 functions that are important, and then they'll call all these other functions from inside them. So we're going to call this create refresh token string function. It's going to take 3 things. It's going to take UUID, role, and CSRF secret. Okay. Now you'll capture whatever is coming back from this function in refresh token string, because that's essentially what you're returning from this function, right? So you'll capture it here, and you'll also capture the error. And now let's handle the error. Actually, we'll handle both the errors together for auth token and refresh token. So here you'll say auth token string, and here we'll use create auth token string, this function we're using here. This also takes the same thing. It takes UUID, takes role, takes CSRF secret. And now let's handle the error. So we'll say if error not equal to nil, return, and you just return from this function. Right. So now we have to work on our create refresh token functions. I don't know why it says string. It's actually create refresh token string. This one, create refresh token string. Here actually you should have said string. So refresh token string is the name of the variable that we're returning from here. So we're returning everything from here, basically from this function. All right. So now let's start working on these functions. So the first function we'll work on is create auth token string. It's not going to be very difficult. It's very straightforward. It's exactly what you did in the last video series of JWT tokens. We're going to use those claims to create the token key. So let's come here, create auth token string. You already know what it takes. It takes UUID string, it takes role, which is a string, it takes CSRF secret, which is a string, and it returns quite simply an auth token string and the error if there's any error. So let's set the expiration time. So we'll say auth token expiration time. We'll have to use the walrus character because we've not used this variable before. So we'll say time.now.add. In our models, we'll have auth token wallet time. We'll define this. And here we'll say Unix. So in your model, you've already defined, as you can see. So there's a spelling mistake here, constant. So you already defined your auth token wallet time, right? It's 15 minutes. And that's what you're using here. So this is your expiry. So basically all these things that we keep making here and there, it might not make sense to you at that moment when you're writing the code, but when we start writing more code, everything starts connecting, right? So whenever you run into a place where you're not understanding anything, just be patient, because maybe after just 15 minutes we'll be covering that exact same thing. That probably, maybe when you were watching this video when I was creating the models, you were getting confused, why do we need these constants, but we need them here. So that's why I create some things beforehand, so that I know I'll be using them later on. So if these kind of things confuse you, then just be patient, watch the next video, maybe you'll get what you're looking for. If till the end of the series you don't understand it, just put it in the comments below, I'll come and help you out. Right, I don't have a lot of viewers, so I reply to all the comments that I get. All right, so here you have auth claims, you have models dot token claims, it's a JWT dot standard claims. So when you say models dot token claims, here it is. I've already defined it. So maybe at that time also you might be getting confused, why am I defining token claims? Is because the token claims is a struct. That's our own type of a data type. It has a role and CSRF string, and it has standard claims. So right now when you're creating this, you're saying it's of type token claims, and you're defining this JWT standard claims here. Right. Sometimes I'm not explaining stuff because I think you're understanding it by default, but I'm still trying to explain every single line. And I'm also assuming that you've already seen the JWT video series, JWT authentication video series in Golang that was just before this. So I'm assuming that, and that's why I'm not explaining a lot of stuff, but I'm still trying to explain every single line, so that if you have still not watched it, then even then you won't get confused here. At least I'm trying to explain as well as I can. So this is your tokens and your standard claims. So this is where this bracket ends, and after this, right, you'll say JWT dot new with claims, same function that we've used before in the previous series. And so you'll have to call this function. This is a very common function with JWT, and whatever comes back from this function, you'll capture that in a variable called auth JWT. So it creates an RSA256 signer for us. So here we'll say JWT dot get signing method RS256, comma, we'll pass auth claims. And now let's generate the auth token string. So we'll say auth JWT dot, which is this basically, which we just got right now, blue dot, signed string, and we pass sign key here. And here you'll say auth token string comma error is equal to, and you return from this function. All right, so essentially you're just returning the auth token string from this function. And the sign key that we just used here is the same as the sign key here that you've created. So now we can work on our create refresh token string, this function. And I might not be able to complete this function entirely, but let's start it off. I have a couple of minutes and then I have another meeting starting up. So you have CSRF string, which is of type string, and what you return from this function is a refresh token string, which is again a string, and an error, which is a string. So you're taking UUID, role, and CSRF, and you return refresh token string and error. And essentially what you're doing is almost the same, right? So you'll have this function here, which I'll type out. I won't copy and paste, so that if you're coding along with me, you also build some muscle, memory muscle. Refresh token valid time, which is the variable that we have defined here. Refresh token valid time. And then you have Unix. And you will capture this in a variable called refresh token expiry. So let's say that refresh token expiry. All right. And in your DB file, you'll have a function that we'll work on right now. It's going to be called store refresh token. And we'll capture that in this variable. And if error is not equal to nil, we'll return. And now comes the most important part, which is basically like you created auth claims, you'll create your refresh claims, which will be of type models dot token claims, models dot token claims, which is exactly the same as the one that we've used before. And it takes JWT.standard claims, which has an ID. So this variable that we defined here, refresh JTI, you'll pass that ID here, which is basically refresh JWT token ID, and subject is UUID, and then you have expires at, and you have refresh token expiry, which you've already defined. Put a comma here, put the role and CSRF string, and put a comma here again. Now after this, you'll just say refresh JWT, which is the variable that you want to return from here, as in just like auth JWT, and then you worked on auth JWT, and then you return this variable auth token string. Very similar to that. We just have to do these two steps here as well, right? So here you'll say the same thing, JWT.new with claims, JWT.get signing method rs256 comma refresh claims and here we'll say refresh JWT signed string sign key. We capture that in a variable called refresh token string comma error. So basically it's the same thing, these same two steps we have done out here, and then refresh token string is what we want to return. So we'll return everything from this function that we have. Perfect. So now our so I know I said that I won't be completing this function, but it didn't take very long, so I've completed this function, which is pretty awesome. And so we have reached quite far, we've completed quite a few functions, we've completed quite a few files, and we're going fast, which is nice. So do subscribe to this channel so that you come to know when the next video of this series comes out. Thank you for watching, and see you in the next episode.